Marhaba everyone, and welcome back to Arabic Week 8. So, per usual, كيف الحال اليوم? How are you today? Hopefully everyone is still جيد جدا and staying healthy. So, we did finish the alphabet last time, so we're just going to go through it one more time because it's important to continue to reinforce the way they look and the way they sound because they're the letters they make up the language. So, for the sake of this, I'll just go through straight through, but with the class, I would say it and have them repeat it. But for this, I'll just go a, b, t, th, j, h, ch, d, v, ra, z, s, sh, so, do, to, to, عين غ ف ق ك ل م n h w y. So pretty simple, but we're done with that. So we're going to move on. So today's lesson is all about the Arabic numbers. So they are slightly different from the numbers that we see in the English language. But a fun fact is because of these numbers, from the Arabic mathematicians of the past, we have our modern numbers today. So without these new numbers, we would be doing math and science and anything to do with numbers in Roman numerals. So that could get a little complicated. So the nice Arab mathematicians made it so that a symbol equated to an amount rather than counting the V's and the I's and the X's and the M's. So we're going to start with 0. So I have them phonetically written down here. So صفر. And the double R is just to remind you to roll your R. So صفر. And that's just a little dot. It's seen. I have the text copied and pasted with the keyboard. So they're a little fancier than what they would be handwritten. So just a little dot is fine in a handwritten form. Next, we have the number 1, which is wahid. So again, wahid. And that can just be like our number 1 that we see in English, just a line is perfectly fine. In this case, it doesn't have to be as curvy as this one. The number 2 is ethnan. So it's important to just really highlight this here, especially when it's between two of the same letters. So this is a n and this is a n. So it's important to elongate. So ethnan. And that is the number 2. And the handwritten Arabic version is just a little something like that, kind of slightly curved at the top, but not nearly as thick at the top. Next we have thalatha, and this is 3. Handwritten, it can be seen like that, so pretty similar, but just to reiterate. And this special looking backwards K is just when the L and the A are next to each other. The text combines the two letters together and it just makes that symbol. So you can see it written like that or as independent letters. It just depends on how you see it, but it does exist out there. So it's important to be mindful of it. But that was the number 3, thalatha. This this is where it gets kind of confusing. This is the number 4. And this is arba. So kind of sounds like a pirate. That's how I kind of remembered it when I was learning it. Um, so when you see a 3 in phonetically written out Arabic, that's just basically reminding the reader that the ein is here. So remember the ein was the backwards 3 pretty much, um, in the alphabet. That's just a way for us to type it in English, when we don't have Arabic keyboards or frankly, you're just too lazy to pull it out. It's pretty understood that the 3 means ein. So, arba. So just stressing it at the end, and that's the number 4. This is khamsa. So, khamsa, and that is the number 5. Just a circle. We have the number 6, which is sit'a, and that looks like a 7, but it is a 6. So again, it gets kind of confusing, but once it's memorized, you'll get the hang of it just like the letters. Next, we have Saba. So again, the 3 is just to remind the person reading that the ein is in there. But this is pretty much a V. You can see that, but it's the number 7. Oops, 7. So Saba. Next we have the number 8, which is an upside down V, which is pronounced the mania. So it looks like how I learned it is like a doorway, like Narnia, Thamania. I tried to associate anything I could to help these be a little easier to learn. So that's just kind of how I remembered it is by Thamania for Narnia, a wardrobe door, and it's an upside down V. Number 9 looks like our number 9 in English, and it's Tisa. So that one's pretty simple. Reminding that the ein is in there. And our number 10, there's no symbol for number 10. You just have the kind of like in English, you have the 1 and the 0. That is how it is in Arabic, and that is ashra. So the ein is at the beginning of this one. It's also important to note that while we read Arabic this way, right, numbers are read this way. So if you have 178, you would write it the same way as we do in English. So it would be the 1, the 7, and the 8, like that. So that's just something to keep in mind also because I know I had the same question when I was learning it. So it does go in the direction that we're used to and not in the opposite for numbers. And then here is 100. This is mi'ah. So remembering that the little dots here are just zeros. So mi'ah and elf, which is 1,000. This is one of my favorite words just because I think it's funny that it's called elf. But that is 1,000. So this is just a reiteration of all the numbers. So starting at 0 to 9 and 0 to 9. So you can kind of see their pairs together. So this would be something that I would have the students write down because I give them a blank piece of paper every time where they'd write the full lesson down, the notes basically. So this would be something that they'd write down next to the English version. So next I have a little activity that I would have on the board for them to come up and take turns to draw the lines to the corresponding amount that is shown. So I'd say become, which means how much. So I'd say become Zahara, which is flowers. So we have a couple clues here. You know, we can count the flowers, and we also have the number that we would learn. So they would come up and they'd say, okay, that is saba, and they'd draw a line. Next, become tufa, how many apples? So we can see one, two, three, four, five, or the circle. So we have khamsa. Next would be become shama, how many candles? One, two, three, four, five, six, or the number here, sita. Become kat, one, wahid, and lastly, become shamak, how many fish? And there's ithnan, fish. So that's something I'd have them do as a way to get up and practice with counting them and seeing the number form together. And then the activity I had planned for this lesson was to bring in a set of dominoes, um, and set them up beforehand and have them all face down and have them kind of do a matching game with the dominoes, practicing the numbers, telling me how many, and then on their piece of paper writing the symbol of the letter. So that would just be a way for them to play and stack the dominoes and have fun with that. And then we would talk about our Arab area of the week, which this week is Kuwait. So for the flag, it looks very similar. If you remember the UAE or United Arab Emirates flag, they have green, which symbolizes land and the color of Islam. They have black, which symbolizes the defeat of their enemies in battle. Red, which pretty commonly means bloodshed of their independence and their enemies. And the white for purity. So this is Kuwait here on the map. Um, they have lots of islands out on the coastline. They're pretty small, so you can't. I don't even think this map, yeah, it doesn't include them. But most maps do. They're just kind of little dots on the coast. Um, but Iraq and Kuwait have a somewhat disputed border. So it's not very clear where the land ends for either one of them because Iraq invaded Kuwait during the Gulf Wars. But they also border Saudi Arabia with clear border there, and they have a lot of coastline. So that is one of the biggest islands. You can see some up here, but there's also tinier ones down here. But this is Falaka Island. There's roads, there's schools, and people do live on this island. It's just very tiny and it's beautiful. So, surrounded by water, and it's kind of like a mini Hawaii for Kuwait. So, the currency of Kuwait is the Kuwaiti dinar, and it's actually the world's highest valued currency unit. So, in comparison to America's currency, the dollar, obviously, um, for one Kuwaiti dinar is $3. So that's pretty drastic from what a lot of people think um, of Middle East and Asian culture. They think the dollar is superior, but in this case, it is not. So that's definitely something if you travel to Kuwait to keep in mind. Everything's more expensive there. Their national animal is the Arabian camel. They're very cute. Most of their land is desert in Kuwait, and only 0.6% is actually farmable in Kuwait, so that's definitely a disadvantage. In 2006, they introduced something they called camel racing, which basically is self-explanatory. It's like horse racing, but with camels. You can see here we have the Arabic numbers that we talked about today written on their necks, to mark them. So that's just very interesting, that they race their camels. There are no railways in Kuwait, none whatsoever. They have been discussing in recent years implementing some railways because the roads are getting really crowded. But as of right now, there's still none. And so I have this video here, um, that reiterates some of the facts that I talked about, goes into a little bit more depth with the islands, and talks about the Gulf War. So I'll link that in the description. But that's all I have today. So thank you very much for watching.